Howdy, and it's nice and clear and no smoke here today. So, awesome. And according to maps and everything, it sounds like the smoke's cleared up for most places. So, good news, definitely. All I had to do is buy an air purifier, and now I don't really need it. So, news of the day today, and of course, one of the big news items, no hockey game today. And if you watched the Gary Bettman interview with Ron MacLean last night, well, you could be forgiven if you think, well, when are we going to see it? Is it going to be anytime soon? And this, again, this is where the speculation runs rampant. So again, there's nothing decided, nothing. And the start to when 2020, 2021 is going to actually happen is wide open. And Gary Bettman said yesterday it could be later in December, it could be in January. There's a lot of factors in this. The border's closed. And the most recent poll of Canadians showed that 90% of Canadians agree with keeping the Canadian-American land border closed. And as long as that's closed, then having the National Hockey League crossing the border and being able to do its thing is going to be a problem. American families trying to enter the bubble. Nope. It's not going to happen. So for players who have their families in Canada, they've been able to get their families into the bubble and hang out in Edmonton. For families that are coming in from outside of Canada, that's been a no. So, as they have the 2-week quarantine. So if you go through the 2-week quarantine in Canada, well, that's basically the end of the playoffs. So by the time they're able to enter the bubble, the playoffs are over. So that's one of the big issues at the forefront of how this is going to work. And this is why there's speculation of a Canadian division and American division. They don't want to do that. They really don't. And you know, there's travel issues even if it's within Canada. The logistics of it are a nightmare. I mean, Hockey Night in Canada would be quite happy to every Saturday feature 2 Canadian teams meeting each other in both the early and late game. The ratings would go through the roof. And there are certainly American broadcasters that would look and say, hey, we don't have to show a Canadian team. That means our ratings are going to stay higher. I remember when I was in high school, there were rumors that maybe the NHL would look at having a Canadian division for ratings reasons. That Canadian teams were kind of poison for American ratings in hockey. And we've seen that in other sports too. NBA, baseball, the ratings are generally lower when it involves the Raptors or the Blue Jays. So, you know, the idea of a Canadian division temporarily, maybe. But again, you're going to have to cross the border. You can't just have the Canadian teams playing each other 15 times each and then say, all right, now we're going to have playoffs. So they want to have an 82-game season. They're kind of relenting on that. And there's an obvious reason why. So before the season started, they were looking at this saying, you know what, if this really works, if we get better ratings, then we may look at summer hockey every year. This might be the new norm. The ratings haven't been there. And there's a simple reason why. They're up against baseball, basketball. Now they're up against football. Of course the ratings are going to be low. So for hockey, this is kind of a learning experience they're going through where they're realizing, you know, our traditional calendar works best for us ratings-wise. We're not going to get any headway in the U.S. The ratings in Canada have been fine, but the ratings in the U.S. have been low, and that's the thing. They're up against so many other sports that are more popular in the United States, so it makes total sense. Now, fan attendance is something they're considering as well. I thought the way that Gary Bettman phrased it last night was interesting. He said roughly 50% of NHL incomes are fan-generated, which means that, you know, tickets and jerseys and merch and all that stuff that we buy, it's about 50%. So his concern is that without having fans in attendance, it's not just losing ticket revenue, it's losing that merchandise at the door. It's those team stores suffering too. So that's something he was looking at, and I thought, you know, that's a good point. And so he's looking at it as if there might be stages. Like there could be early on, there are no fans in attendance, and you work towards later in the season, you can have more and more fans in attendance. And so if they push this back to mid-December, if they push it back to January 1st, then you have a better chance of having fans in attendance at the end of the season. But again, if they don't want to have hockey in July and August again, then you have to have a shortened season. I'm all for a shortened season. Like, the 82-game season is something they've insisted on. I am all for a 48-game season. Bring it on. Those are absolutely great seasons. Love that. But again, bubbles would appear to be out. I really think that players, after what they've experienced in Toronto and Edmonton, as much as they're glad to crown a Stanley Cup champion for 2020, they don't like the idea of being away from their families. And I know people make the comparison of, well, military does it right. But if you gave these military guys the option, you said you can make the same amount of money and have your family right there at your side, would they take it? And odds are many of them would. So this is the thing. Players have the option, and I don't think bubbles are going to be a thing in the regular season. Maybe in the postseason, but the postseason, Gary Bettman does not like the idea of expanding the postseason. But if we have another shortened season, there's the possibility that owners looking to recoup some more losses from this coming season could want the 24-team tournament again, where we have the top 8 teams decided and then the other 16 deciding in a play-in tournament. The difference would be simple, though. You wouldn't have the pause. You wouldn't need to have a tournament to decide where all the seeds were going to be. You could just have a best 2 out of 3 tournament between the other 16 teams to decide who's going to be in the 16-team playoffs. So, and again, this is all about trying to recoup losses. That's why we're here. That's why the NHL is having the Stanley Cup. They want to award the Cup in 2020, and they don't want to lose their TV contract money. They don't want to lose more and more revenues than they have to. So it all adds up, and there's a reason they kind of have to sort of play, but it's when they play. It's timing this exactly right. And so, yeah, we could see 24 teams happen in a shortened season next year. I don't know. I'm 50-50 on it. I enjoyed the play-in round for what it was. And what we're seeing in the Stanley Cup final right now is Tampa Bay and Dallas, 2 teams that were in the round robin. So it's not like we're looking at teams that didn't, qualify for the playoffs. We didn't get that scenario that people wanted, which was Chicago and Montreal in the finals, to prove it's nothing but a joke. No, we got Tampa and Dallas, 2 pretty good teams in the finals against each other. So, yeah, I'm anxious that we're gonna see free agency and the draft so close together, and we're gonna start getting an idea for how next season's rosters are gonna look. And then it's going to be up to the teams on how to do this. Keep in mind, the NFL, 0 positive tests coming out of week 1. And that's what the NHL is looking at, is the NFL right now and saying, okay, we'll see how they do. So week 2, you hold your breath and you hope everything goes well there too. Jimmy Howard. So he's pretty much done with Detroit. That's at least the speculation, is that he won't be returning to the Detroit Red Wings. But he also doesn't want to retire. He's not envisioning retirement. And it'll be interesting to see if somebody, if an Ottawa comes knocking and says, well, we'll employ him as a backup for a year. I don't think he'll have any delusions that he's going to be the starter again, but somebody might take him on as a backup on a decent cap hit and see if maybe they're able to get some wins out of him. He had a miserable year last year. It was awful. His year in Detroit was absolutely miserable. Bernier will still be a goaltender for them, but yeah, that was a miserable experience, I would think, for Howard and for the Red Wings. So it's better if he moves on. But if he wants to go somewhere else, somebody will employ him. There was an interesting segment last night on Sportsnet, and so I will link to it in the description for this video. That being said, I don't think the Sportsnet ones will play outside of Canada. But for Brian Burke, he talked about as a GM how difficult it is for Canadian teams. And he used $5 million as the number, and there's charts on this, on taxes and all that when it comes to Canada and the US. For a player who makes $5 million a year, so $5 million cutoff, they make, if they sign in the US, $500,000 more that they get to take home than they do in Canada. For players making $5 million in Canada, they take home about $1.3 million. And I know that's more money than any of us make, right? But if I tell you you can have $1.3 million here or $1.8 million there, you might shrug and say, I'll take the $1.8 million there. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion. It is that time to have that again. But Burke said that if he wanted players to play in Toronto rather than moving to an American city, he'd have to offer them an extra $500,000 a year on their contract. And maybe this is why Canadian teams end up with bad contracts. they seem to end up with some pretty bad contracts because players may say, well, I can make $4 million there. All right, well, I'll give you $4.5 million not to go there. So you have to offer them that extra money to make up the difference. So yeah, it's one of those discussions we have this time of year, and I don't see it changing. You know, when I see like their tax rate is 52.9%, I think it is. It's more than half their money goes to the federal government. I can understand why players would look at that and go, now again, they have ways of investing it. You have ways of investing money, putting money into RSPs. That comes off your taxes. You have ways of taking money off your taxes, off what you owe. Just saying that before deductions, $500,000. It's a healthy sum of money. And there's more deductions you can get in the States than you can get in Canada, too. There's more loopholes, I believe, with the American tax system, although figuring out the American tax system is... anyways, so yeah, there's your little discussion of taxes. So on to stat news. Kravtsov, the guy that the Rangers have the rights to, 4-game goal streak for him in the KHL. So once the NHL season's done, I'll be reporting on European leagues and what's going on around the rest of the world when it comes to hockey players that we all know and love. And Kravtsov, off to a pretty good start. So we'll see, what the experience for these guys in Europe, how this works. Because it'll be interesting. These guys are playing in Europe now. The European leagues are starting up. Well, if the NHL starts, let's say they start December 15th and it's an 82-game season, some of these guys could be playing, 110, 115 games this year if they did a whole 82-game schedule? That could be a nightmare. It's a lot of hockey, and that's a lot of wear and tear on the body as well. It's going to be fascinating to see how this works. That's all I'm saying. It's going to be fascinating to see how all this works. We are 16 days away from the draft. We are 19 days away from free agency. So in 16 days' time, we'll see Lafreniere in a Rangers jersey. And then where all the rest go. And then the day after that, they have rounds 2 through 7. And then a couple days after that, it is free agency time. You get everything all straightened up in like a 3-day period. And then we might be waiting a while for hockey. Or maybe not. Maybe they do find a way to do it by December 1st. And it's going to be fascinating to watch. I want to remind people before we close this out, rumors are the devil. And I keep getting links of, hey, I hear Besser's getting traded for Ekblad. No. I haven't heard it from a source that I really trust with that. Like, could it happen? I guess so. Sure doesn't fix the Canucks cap problem. And that's the thing. The Canucks are looking to dump cap, right? So let me go to cap friendly. Normally I would pause, but we're friends. I don't need to pause. We're all good. So let's just say, where's Florida on here? Oh, they're down towards the bottom. That's cute. I just say that because they got some cap. $7.5 million for Ekblad for the next 5 years, right? And then on the Canucks side of it, you've got... And then because the Canucks don't have a lot of guys signed, they're down towards the bottom of the chart too. The Canucks have Besser at $5.875 million. So you're adding about $1.75 million in cap. And you're doing that on a team that already has major cap problems. It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make sense. The Canucks are looking... The only reason that the Besser rumors seem to have been out there is they're trying to find a way to dump off some money. And nobody will touch Eriksson. This Beagle doesn't have a tremendous amount of trade value, if any, right now. And so Besser's the one that, of their core players, they might be willing to move. But Ekblad doesn't make sense. Ekblad's a really good defenseman. But the Canucks are also looking to cut down on shots against. I'm not sure you do that with Ekblad. So that's why I haven't been saying anything about that. Because it leaves the Canucks in a worse cap position. Look for defensemen. All the rumor sites, come here, come on in. All right, make sure that the trade rumors you're posting make sense cap wise, because we're in a flat cap universe right now. And so for a team like the Canucks, who are completely screwed against the cap next year, they're not going to take on a $7.5 million a year contract for a guy for 5 more years. in exchange for a player who's on a more team-friendly contract that's up in a couple of years, yes, and he'll probably get a raise after that, but maybe not with the way he played this year. And so it just doesn't make sense to put yourself in a worse situation with the salary cap than where you are right now. And that's where, when I saw that rumor, I thought, nope. And it was just immediate. No, not unless Benning makes some major move to drop cap money somewhere else. Unless Tyler Myers' contract is going out, and boy, if you replaced Myers with Ekblad, you get more offense, you lose all the hitting, and then your defensive side of it. If Markstrom sticks around, if he thought he was in a shooting gallery this past season, next season would be tremendously different if you traded out Myers and you brought in Ekblad and lost Besser in the process. And yeah, it's just I stay away from them. I'm not gonna, and no matter how long the off season is, you're not gonna see me posting anything about them unless they come from a source within TSN, within Sportsnet, ESPN, something through an NHL.com column, something like that. Until that happens, it's not going to be on the board. So anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. And don't worry, if the off-season's a long off-season, we got NHL 21 coming out soon. And I'll do a deep dive into NHL 21. Not like the live streams I did this year with NHL 20. It'll be a completely different experience for NHL 21. Far more getting into the meat and potatoes of creating a team and all of that, and running a team and micromanaging, because we may not have hockey for a while. I think we will, because again, the NHL can't afford to shut down for an extended period of time. They can't, because then you're walking into irrelevancy at a time when you really can't afford to, because you've got a TV contract coming up south of the border, and if you're irrelevant, you're not drawing any ratings, well, you're not going to get a good TV contract either. And then you're setting yourself up to lose money, not just for a couple of years, but potentially for a decade plus. So it's a fascinating time for the National Hockey League. It's a stressful time, and that's why they made sure they got the collective bargaining agreement out of the way immediately. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.